Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. It is Monday night, 9 p.m. Ask Abhijit time, and you are not going to be disappointed. Abhijit is with us and he's going to start answering questions. But before that, I just want Abhijit to dwell upon a little bit on the arsenal that the United States has left behind in Afghanistan. Abhijit, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
Vail, Vetri Vail, and may the blessings of Lord Krishna be on everyone on Janmashtami.
Thank you, and same to you, my friend. And let us jump straight into the report that has been the report that has been left behind. This is Taliban's new arsenal, and somebody has said that this is the fourth largest army in the world now, with the amount of arms and equipment that they have left behind there. Abhijit, one thing that I have heard is that the fighter aircraft and some of the critical components have been disabled by the US prior to leaving. I don't know. I don't want to make any guesses. You take it away and share with our viewers, because this is your bailiwick. This is your specialty.
Okay, so first of all, there's a second part to this graphic, which is all the aircraft. I think that's part 2, if we can show that as well.
Yeah, we are showing that now.
Right. Now, I just want everybody to realize, first of all, this simply does not add up to $85 billion. Right. It's about 15, maybe $20 billion at most. Definitely not $85 billion. I don't know where this, if it is $85 billion, then clearly we're not being shown the equipment that's been left behind. That is not shown here. Right. But if you look at these two slides combined, I want you to tell me what here exactly is a game changer. The Afghan Air Force, an army that was left behind the last time round by the Afghan government, well, by the Soviets and then by the Afghan government of Najibullah, was far, far better equipped than this. Look at the aircraft. If you zoom in on the aircraft, 4 big C-130 transport aircraft, 23 Embraer Tucanos, which can only be used for counterinsurgency, Cessna 208s, which can only be used for, communication liaison and some kind of surveillance and things. With the Cessna 208s, it's kind of basic strike aircraft. This, if you took it into a high opposition environment like Pakistan or India or even Tajikistan would manage to shoot these down. Let's not forget when 2 pilots tried crossing over across the Uzbek border with their aircraft, they were shot down in no time by Uzbek air defenses. Okay, these helicopters that you're looking at, the 43 MD 530s, they are at best very light attack. They don't change anything. The Black Hawks don't change anything. The Mi-17s don't change anything. And even there, we don't know. Remember, the Afghan government itself couldn't fly all these aircraft, even though they had trained pilots. Why? Because the contractor services went around. It had all the maintenance and resupply had been contractorized. So there's nothing out there. Now focus on the land equipment, please.
Yeah, can you bring? Yes, there you go.
Now tell me here, what is so militarily significant about this? Even if some of its way finds its, by some way, some of this finds its way to Pakistan, what exact game changer is anybody seeing out here? Right. So look at the assault rifles. The Pakistanis have the Steyr, the bullpup Steyrs, which are better. The pistols, will they be used by terrorists? Of course. Will the assault rifles, will they be used by terrorists? Of course. But what is this great input? Is it some great magical assault rifle that is doing something that has never been done before? Is it some great software-defined radios of the latest generation that have been left behind that are doing something? You're afraid of 8,000 trucks. 22,000 Humvees means nothing. You remember what our Hawker hunters did at in 1971 against Pakistani tanks. These things, understand, these are meant for insurgency, counterinsurgency warfare. For insurgents to use them alone, there is a lot of jugaad required. For me, if you look further down, those 42,000 SUVs, depending on what they are, if they're American SUVs, they're going to break down. There is a reason terrorists across the world, from ISIS to Taliban, use Toyota and Datsun SUVs, because they can skip 5-6 maintenance services and nothing will happen. The Humvees, if you don't maintain them within a year or two, they're not going to be operable. Each one of these has a significant maintenance footprint. What exactly can it be used against? Will it make some kind of a difference against Amrullah Saleh? Yes, maybe. But remember, the Soviets couldn't capture the Panchi with far, far significant numbers than these, with far more significant equipment than this. So, this is a completely overstated point of view. Would it have been nicer if the Americans had blown all of these up? Yes. Would it have been less of a headache for Amrullah Saleh? Yes. But this poses no threat to India right now, except the guns. But see, the guns, the terrorists were getting as many as they wanted from the Pakistanis. What is the specific caliber of this gun that is going to change the equation in Kashmir? What is the specific features of these 126,000 pistols that's going to change anything in Kashmir? What is the nature of these 64,000 machine guns that's going to change anything in Kashmir? Do you think Lashkar-e-Toiba is going to get its hand on Embraer Tucanos? You think the Pakistani Air Force, even the worst plane in the Pakistani Air Force, the basic plane, not the worst, the JF-17 can shoot those Tucanos out of the air before they even know what hit them? The Tucanos don't even have a proper radar. I mean, you can't, because you've got the propeller up front. So, this thing is just completely exaggerated. There are more important things to focus on in Afghanistan. I think this $85 billion worth of equipment won't be an issue. It's more the morale and the pride of America on seeing American equipment that was used against certain people now being used by them. That's about it.
Abhijit, the United States government has not refuted the $88 billion number. So it is possible that not everything is being put on display. However, we do know the reach or the extent of the United States arms and ammunition. If there is something beyond this, like F-35s, for example, in your opinion, no F-35s or F-17s are left on at Bagram or something like that?
F-16s, no. There is nothing that we've seen on satellite is worth mentioning. Okay, I suspect the $85 billion would be spares, supplies, ammunition. I'm still not getting how all of this adds up to $85 billion. Right? But there is basically no electronically sophisticated equipment out here. In a sense, this is the same level of sophistication as, say, the 70s or 80s. This is mechanical equipment. There is nothing electronically sophisticated out here.
Last question before we go into US viewers' questions. The Chinese helicopters vis-a-vis the Black Hawk, it is rumored that they don't have as strong, as powerful an engine as the Black Hawk. And therefore, the Chinese have basically decided that they will bankroll Taliban in exchange for getting their hands on Black Hawk. Sounds like a conspiracy theory, but we don't know if it's going to happen or not. We have seen some Black Hawks fly out of Taliban and go to other countries. There are some videos. We don't know if it's right or wrong.
Before 1989, when the Tiananmen Square sanctions happened,
yes,
the Americans had given them some very similar helicopters with some very similar engines. Okay. As we've discussed before, it's not everybody knows the principle of crystal blade. So there's nothing to reverse engineer. Right? There are civilian helicopters which the Chinese have, which are very similar to this, with similar engines. Most of China's aircraft that its Chinese airlines uses are crystal blade engines. Just having an engine doesn't mean you understand the principle behind it. We all understand the principle behind how crystal blade engines work, how certain turboprop engines work and things like that. that doesn't mean you have the necessary competence to reverse engineer it or to come up with an equivalent engine, right? So it's just not happening. So let them give the Black Hawk to the Chinese. Nothing's going to happen. There is no design on anything that you're seeing left behind that the Chinese are going to learn anything new from.
So again, we're going to get a little bit more of a deeper perspective from the Chinese side tomorrow with Elmer Yuan at 7:30 p.m. IST. So stay tuned for that, viewers. So let's now jump into questions for Abhijit. Can we have the first question, please? Krishna Rao. Yeah.
How accurate was Tom Hanks' movie Charlie Wilson in describing the Afghan crisis? Reasonably accurate. Not. I mean, there was, of course, some dramatization and things like that, but it was pretty damn accurate. So there was no real issue out there because it was actually based on a real story. So some of the dramatic incidents you can't exactly narrate. But remember, it was much more about Charlie Wilson and a lot less about the Afghans. I don't know how much, as I remember it, it was more about an idealistic American senator or congressman, whatever he was, rather than about the real fight and things like that happening in Afghanistan. So, no, it was reasonably accurate.
Krishna Rao again, what is your stand on reservation in general, whether caste-based, region-based, or income-based?
Required with a phase-out. It's important to have it, but the problem is it's seen as an end goal in itself because India simply isn't developing. We're not industrializing. The total remains the same. Education remains highly regulated. It remains highly confused. There's a huge lack of sync between all the education systems and with lower education systems, with higher education systems, of primary systems, with secondary and tertiary systems, etc., etc., etc. The problem right now is I don't have an issue with reservation at all. My issue is it's seen as an end goal when the pie isn't expanding, right? For a country that is so desperately short on education, we're not seeing market forces apply out here properly as they should in matching supply with demand.
Next question, please. Aditya B, how do you discover new books to read? Please advise.
Entirely what friends recommend to me. There's an old book, for example, somebody just sent me a message on Twitter today where I'm reading this 2015 book. I didn't know it existed, but somebody recommended it to me yesterday, so I bought the Kindle version and I'm reading it. It's called The Hive Mind by Gareth Jones. Fascinating book. But I go entirely by recommendations from what people tell me, people that I trust. Right?
Have you finished reading this?
Yes, I have actually.
Okay. We're going to have a hangout on this, guys.
Yep.
It's going to be a power pack hangout. So Hail Seth and Abhijit Iyer and I, where they will ask me the questions. So please go ahead.
So this is how I discover books, right? So my friend Tuhin Sinha had also written a book. I normally never read fiction, so he sent me a book. I really enjoyed it. The two books by Shri here, again, like I said, I don't read fiction, but I started reading it and I really enjoyed it, right? We already did a book review of part 1. We're going to do a review of part 2. So it's entirely word of mouth, or sometimes when I'm buying a book on Amazon, I will come across a book which I'll be like, hey, that's interesting. I'm going to buy that one. The thing is, it's the books that I've read that friends have recommended have all been good. The books that I have decided to buy on Amazon by myself, 50% have been pretty damn good, but almost 60% would have been just atrocious.
Aditya again, what kind of similarities exist between Roman pagan gods and Hindu gods?
A lot. With the old Vedic pantheon, a lot. Because remember, our new gods, Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma, they are a product of theology. The old gods were a product largely of they had mythological roots, and there was a huge theology associated with them. And then the theology became so advanced and complex that the old gods probably weren't able to keep up with how the new philosophies had to be interpreted. We see this as a rule. Iron Age religious thinking is far, far, far more sophisticated than Bronze Age religious thinking. But the Bronze Age, the pre-Bronze Age, technically, if you look at it, Indra, Vayu, Varuna, all these people, they are probably Stone Age gods. They were incorporated into a Bronze Age mythology, but the mythology probably didn't suit theology, which is why the moment theology takes off or becomes very advanced and needs to be reduced to an anthropomorphic concept, you then come up with the new gods. Now, between the Roman gods and the Hindu gods, there is massive similarity. Indra holds the thunderbolt, king of the gods. That's the same as Poseidon and Neptune. Neptune in Rome, Poseidon in Greece. Neptune in Rome. That's Varuna. Varuna is Poseidon and Neptune. Exact same attributes, everything.
Indra is Thor, right?
Indra is Zeus and Jupiter. Exact same attributes. There's a lot of things. The Gemini twins are the Maruts. Things like that. There is a heck of a lot of similarity. I think to get this answer, just go check out Wikipedia. You should be able to do a side-by-side analysis. There's just too much here to compare.
Yogesh Baviskar, how much of the arsenal left behind by US is actually useful for either Taliban? We just covered this. Is there a long-term impact on India?
No long-term impact. Nobody has ever accused the Kashmiri terrorists of ever being short of arms or wanting for arms. So, just because you've got a new type of gun or a new type of pistol doesn't mean, it's not just having those pistols and guns. It's also getting them across the border. No? And it wasn't like they were starved for supplies or anything like that. So, nothing. For China, we discussed, there's no great, this thing. For Pakistan, again, Pakistan can induct some of it, but what's it going to do with all of it? Because it's not game-changing weaponry. Next.
Shashank Sharma wants to know, Abhijit sir, there is a UPSC book on IR by Mr. Pavneet Singh, and he predicted the current situation in Afghanistan in 2019. Your views, please.
Well, I've not read the book, so how am I meant to give a view about it?
IR is what? International relations?
International relations.
Samir Bhatnagar, you think China will buy some Black Hawks and copy the technology? We also answered this.
We've already discussed that.
Yeah. Sandeep K. M.V.R. Sastry claims 1200 years of Indian history is cropped by British historians by referring Gupta Chandragupta as Maurya Chandragupta to bring Vedic civilization to just 1500 BC wrongly. I think the number may be incorrect. Between the Gupta and the Maurya, it's only 600 years, I believe. Or 9, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I've read all these books. I used to be obsessed by them. I'm just not buying it. Okay, I'm not buying it because the antiquity that we seem to have about this need for us to be the oldest and the first in everything, it's a very childish thing. How does it make a difference? But anyway, I've not seen any concrete proof about this thing. I think it's 900 years that the Guptas were actually the Maurya period. That is 300 to 200 BC kind of thing. That's fine. If you want to believe it, great. I don't. I really don't see what the value in that particular thing is. Because, there's nothing practically. Tomorrow, if somebody were to genetically prove that Hindus just came into the Indian subcontinent 200 years back, I can still construct a very, very good case for us to be the dominant people in South Asia and for Hinduism to be the state religion irrespective.
Just for the record, viewers, the Maurya dynasty was Chandragupta, Bindusara, Ashoka. And the Gupta, the other Gupta was Samudragupta, Chandragupta 1. I'm not sure who followed him, maybe Chandragupta 2. I don't know. Abhijit, you want to fill in for me?
Chandragupta 2 was Vikramaditya.
Vikramaditya, right. So this is three sets of kings. That is where I think people got confused that maybe they are being referred to the same person.
Look, I'm not seeing a very convincing case about it anyway. Either way, I see the point is archaeological evidence. I've seen circumstantial evidence. I'm not seeing archaeological evidence. Till I see that archaeological evidence, I'm not buying it.
You should read this book. In fact, I will have it shipped out to you. I know the author, Padma Bhushan awardee Dr. Nagaswamy, Dharma Yoga. The reason I say that is because he traces some of the things that you mentioned, like Vedic civilization, about Indra, Varuna, and so on and so forth. All that stuff is maintained, he's traced, as well as the periods. Everything is here. It's just fantastic. He has a chapter on Ashoka, and Dr. Nagaswamy says that Ashoka was the one who formalized writing Sanskrit, that there is something called Prakrit that went east of Takshashila, and there is something called Kharoshti that forms the basis for Arabic and Hebrew, because both you write from right to left. Anyway, that is the basic premise there. It's a fascinating study because he has a lot of coins to back up his theory. So anyway, that's something that
I'm generally extremely wary of these India first arguments. I don't know what it is, this acute inferiority complex of the Indian mind. I don't give a shit if you were the first or the last.
No.
I don't know why.
There is no India first, India last here. What he is trying to say is something else. But anyway, you should read it before you form opinions.
And I don't care if something came from abroad or went from here.
No, it's fact, right?
I don't even care if we didn't even come from Central Asia. We actually came from Scandinavia to India. Right? The sign of an ossified, fossilized, weak mind is wanting to look back and perpetually seeking connection with history. The sign of a strong mind is somebody who can create an intellectual case to weld any history, no matter how inconvenient, into your current narrative. I don't deal with inferiority complexes. I refuse to read inferiority complex-ridden books. I refuse to subsidize this entire culture of failure and incompetence and inferiority complexes. I don't care. I'm not interested in theories. I'm only interested in archaeological facts, in correct dating, and that's it.
Let's go to the next question, please. The Lazy Indian Channel. Does China value its citizens' life? Pakistan context. Will they burn their hand in Afghanistan or play safekeeping Pakistan in the front?
Interesting question. See, China does value its own citizens' lives in other countries. They don't value the citizens' lives in their own country. Okay? So if the Chinese government kills you, it's your honor and pleasure to be killed by the Chinese government. But if Chinese citizens die in other countries, it's like, how dare you? Only we have the right to kill our citizens, which is a good thing to do. Now, I don't think China is planning on touching Afghanistan with a barge pole till they see the ability that there is enough stability out there for them to go around and create infrastructure and investment, which the Pakistanis will never allow because they don't want Pakistan bypassed as a means of accessing west of the Malacca Straits.
By the way, a couple of things happened today. One was that a jeep laden with explosives got bombed using, I think, a drone, but I think there were some civilian casualties. This was in Kabul. This jeep with suicide bombers was headed for the airport, allegedly. The other thing is, maybe you can touch upon that, and also, how's the situation in Panchshir Valley today?
Panchshir is fine. I guess they're going to get starved out. Look, starving out doesn't matter because the Panchshir is almost self-sustaining. It's low population, very fertile, so they'll be able to sustain themselves on food. The issue is ammunition. Like I said, with all that equipment we saw, the only person to really suffer will be Amrullah Saleh. But again, the Panchshir defenses are extremely strong. The top of those mountains are almost uniform, so you can't cross over the mountains, realistically speaking, in any meaningful way at least. And you can't really pull off much in the Panchshir. Because, even coming down to fly with helicopters, you can't really land a helicopter very easily in the Panchshir because, as a rule, in ravines, landing helicopters becomes quite a dangerous thing. And especially with bad maintenance, it's going to be an issue. Now, as for the jeep, I am calling out bullshit on two attacks that have happened. Number one, the so-called planner of the ISIS-K attack, that planner of the Kabul airport attack, who was taken down within 24 hours, and B, this so-called second ISIS attack, which took down only little children, a shopkeeper, and students. Okay, I'm not buying this at all. This is absolute codswallop, because if you did not have intelligence to first of all detect what ISIS was going to do to you, how did you then suddenly get intelligence within 24 hours to pinpoint the planner of the attack? And then how did you get intelligence within 48 hours suddenly overnight without anything to decide that this guy was an ISIS family going about, and not even employ your normal protocols of seeing to it that there are no civilian casualties? Of course, it doesn't matter, because, with the Americans under Obama, 90% of those killed were collateral. Only 10% killed were actual terrorists. The remaining 90% were all collateral damage. Civilians essentially killed. So, I'm not buying this nonsense. For this to have had some credibility, it would have had to take weeks to pinpoint somebody, because it involves a lot of listening in with electronics, targeting, pinpointing, things like that. I'm not buying this crap. They're just doing these attacks to satiate some audience back home.
Next question, YSK Chaitanya. I got an admission in MA International Relations online degree from OP Jindal University. Should I go for it? Is it considered an equivalent to a normal degree?
Yes, it is. It is. It absolutely is. And OP Jindal has some fantastic teachers, so go for it.
Great. Now you're doing college counseling. Very good. Kaushik Chari. Why does India keep buying Russian weapons and not NATO weapons?
Look, it's the one thing that keeps us in the Russian good books, because, it's only oil and weapons that we buy from Russia. There's nothing that Russia produces that we need. So, we have to kind of buy Russian weapons, because the normal threat the Russians use is, if you don't buy them, we'll sell them to the Chinese. Or if you don't buy a certain quota of weapons, we will sell advanced weapons to the Chinese. So, it's one of those things. I think it's more to do with charity than anything else.
Next question, please. Aditya, shouldn't India evacuate foreign nationals also to gain goodwill? What's the ramification for India to walk in POK, citing Taliban issues?
No, India should not be evacuating foreign nationals, because that goodwill doesn't count for squat. There's no amount of goodwill that the Washington Post and New York Times can't dissipate within 24 seconds, leave alone 24 hours flat. And the ramifications for India, please understand, there are nuclear weapons. We've discussed this over and over and over again ad nauseum, that there are nuclear weapons involved. I would suggest you go back and read the 4 thresholds of Pakistani nuclear use. Any significant capture of land, any significant destruction of their military, any significant economic blockade, and the 4th threshold, I forget now. But go check it up. I think it was Salim Kidwai who made these 4 nuclear thresholds of Pakistan. The first and foremost thing is the nuclear threshold, because you don't know what triggers them and what doesn't, number one. Number two, that landscape is impossible. You're essentially walking into what America walked into in Afghanistan. You have no means of controlling that place. It is nasty. It is brutal. You won't be able to hold it down unless you're willing to expel the entire population, as in wipe the population clean out there. I don't think we can, because the consequences of that will be the diplomatic and reputational consequences of that, that kind of a complete cleansing is very scary. And then imagine what it does to your own troops. If you're willing to ethnically cleanse one part, what's preventing you from using ethnic cleansing as across the board to solve all your problems when they become inconvenient? But understand, unless you ethnically cleanse, you can't control that part.
The 4th one that you missed out, I think, is Indus Water by Udayan Majumdar. Thank you. Indus Water. You remember you're saying 4 things, you got 3. You didn't remember the 4th one just now.
Yeah, the water threshold. Yeah.
Thank you then. Sai Shreyas wants to know, do you think Xi's recent crackdown on businesses, tech and wealth creation is good news for a declining USA? And can India leverage this?
Yes, it's very good. Because see, America, for innovation to happen, you need to have complete freedom. Okay. What political correctness is doing in America, understand why are all the big companies promoting all this CRT political correctness and things? Because they want to control innovation. They have reached a pinnacle, both of technology and of wealth. Unprecedented wealth now in private hands in America, to the point that the equation is skewed completely in the favor of business and no longer in the favor of the state. And what that means is they don't want change. They don't want disruption anymore. They came to the fore by disrupting. They will not tolerate any more disruption. So they're doing this to stall any innovation or disruption that happens next. That they're essentially creating self-perpetuating entities, and they're using social measures like CRT and political correctness to do it. So that is where America is now going to go down. Remember, it will never be that China that destroyed America. It is America that destroyed America. China never even went to the level or extent of going through the information age revolution. They experienced a manufacturing revolution, and this is why they're going to perpetually be stuck in a middle income trap. They're going to maximum go up to about $12,000 to $15,000. And after that, the kind of controls that you're seeing, especially given Xi Jinping's, intolerance for even the mildest dissent, Jiang Zemin, Hu Jintao, they all allowed a significant level of dissent, which allowed China to grow within limits, of course. Xi Jinping, you never know what he considers dissent, what he doesn't. He's also incompetent at managing the economics of whatever he's doing in terms of brick and belt and road and all that nonsense. So yes, it is also the beginning of the end of the Chinese miracle or whatever. Xi Jinping is to China what Brezhnev is to the Soviet Union. With the benefit of hindsight, 40, 50 years down the line, we will pinpoint the decline of China to Xi Jinping.
You do know that he is a high school dropout, right?
Is he? I didn't know that.
Well, so here's the interesting story.
I think he was a voluntary dropout. I think when his father was purged, he was kind of kicked out or something like that.
Could be. So he spent a year in Ohio with the Ohio governor or Cleveland, one of those two states. And he spent a year there, like a foreign family program or something like that. And they say, oh, this time he went and got a degree. But you won't get a master's degree or an engineering degree without finishing high school. So lots of gaps there.
Because he is a trained engineer or something like that, as far as I know.
So anyway, somebody who knows the family has said that
I don't think he's a dropout. I don't think he's a dropout.
He didn't even finish 7th grade, is what somebody said. But we know how politicians have acquired their grades. So let's move on. Yeah. Kedarnath Iyer, is there an opportunity to buy leftover weapons from the Taliban, reverse engineer and build in India?
Why? The Black Hawks, you're already getting the naval version of the Black Hawks, the S-70 for your fleet. I'm just telling you, I'm going on telling you that the caliber of weapons is extremely low. You can't just reverse engineer, because remember, production has two things, the how and the why. In this case, simply getting it, you neither know the how or the why. Right? So it's pointless.
Next question. Devasish Chatterjee wants to know, have the Taliban allowed all Hindus and Sikhs to leave, or have some been held back for rape / conversion / both?
No, nobody's been held back, except I think there was that last batch of 160 Sikhs and Hindus who were meant to be evacuated. And the bomb blast happened, and since then there's been absolutely no news about them. So I don't know what's happened out there. But remember, they are not going to they're not going to be as crude as they were the first time around. They may want to rape, convert, kill them, whatever, but will they actually go ahead and do it? Big question mark. Especially in Kabul, big question mark. But remember, in Mazari Sharif and Herat, commercial flights have resumed. Iran Air and Cam Air are flying regular flights to both Mazari Sharif and Herat.
Next question from K. Raghu. Abhijit, I'm getting extremely frustrated with the sheer incompetence of US political leadership handling the Afghan issue. What do I do to get myself normal?
Meditate. Meditate. When there's nothing you can do, you meditate, you find mental peace. That's it.
Krishna Rao, how is Baba Kalyani's Bharath Forges defense equipments?
Look, I've not heard about them in trials. I've only seen them at exhibitions. So I can't really comment because I've never actually seen or read or gotten feedback. I know their howitzers were trialed out, but I haven't actually met anyone who was at the trials to make a to give me an informed opinion.
Next question from Shailesh Latkar. What is a good strategy for India to contain China in the Indian Ocean region? Can we do it while keeping China at bay at the border?
In fact, if you want to keep them at bay in the border, you have to do it at sea. This is the why is it that Europe was always the main source of tension between America and the USSR, and not the Barents Sea, where Alaska and the USSR literally were a few kilometers from each other. As Sarah Palin used to say, as governor of Alaska, I could open my window and I could see Russia. Right? So why was it never the Barents Sea, and why was it always Europe? Because in order to keep the Barents Sea quiet, you had to create maximum tension in Europe so that Europeans will die, but Americans won't die. And it suited Russia as well, because the first wave would all be West Germans and Hungarians and Czechs dying before they reached Soviet land. So it's the same thing out here. You need to be far, far more aggressive in terms of what you do in the South China Sea, and make them reorient their entire strategy towards dealing with us in the South China Sea. The problem is we go in for all these expensive projects like aircraft carriers and things, and several different varieties of destroyers. Each generation of destroyers, we only build 3, then we go on to a new one, then we go on to a new one. No, you can't do it that way. You need 30, 40 of the same kind of destroyers or frigates. You don't even need destroyers. Just go in for 40, 50 of the same kind of frigates. Normalize it there. You need 20, 30 of the same kind of submarines. Normalize it there. You can't keep doing these 6 submarine acquisitions. It's stupid. But we do it. See, there's sea dominance and there's sea control. Sea denial and sea control. Now, sea denial is where you're preventing the other person from coming through. Sea control is where you're adding aircraft carriers where you can do certain things. You don't even need to do a sea control strategy. It's too expensive. All you realistically need is your submarines to be operating in the South China Sea with the ability to sink them at any given point of time. And you have a huge advantage there because your submarines are all Western submarines with infinitely more sophisticated electronics and much more silent than Chinese submarines.
Next question is from Nandish. Question for both. Does gender pay gap exist? Pew Research also states it exists. Is this concept a woke idea and based on cherry picking on the type of jobs?
Well, the gender pay gap does exist, but see, here's the issue out here. There is I fundamentally believe in equal pay for equal work. Okay, now the gender gap in physical labor is significant, and I think it needs to be maintained because the only advantage a man has over a woman is sheer physical strength. So if you're looking at bricklayers and things like that, a man will fundamentally get more work done than a woman. Okay. On the other hand, in an office environment where it's ideas that are more important, it's not even the face time that you put in that's important. It's the quality of ideas and how much it adds to the company's bottom line that counts. Unfortunately, the problem is a lot of us are stuck in this thing where we think that a woman having her periods for 3 days a month is somehow means that she should not be paid enough, whereas intellectually speaking, she would be doing probably a lot more than her male colleagues who are there throughout. So there is something as a gender pay gap, but it's a very nuanced issue which needs to be looked at from a very nuanced point of view. I oppose this kind of generic, just using one metric to measure it all.
And it's been proven that women are better at multitasking than men. This is a accepted fact. So there is a lot of merit in what Abhijit says, and I second that. But it is nuanced. It has to be looked at. It's not a one size fits all kind of a solution. Next
so, for
question.
example, Wimbledon, the women's finals you pay 3 sets, the men's finals you play 5 sets. Why should the women get paid the same as men? You play 5 sets, you get paid the same as men.
Right. Next question from Ajay Nair. Are you not worried that American high-tech night vision tech will fall in wrong hands vis-a-vis Afghanistan stash?
Look, I'm asking you this question. What exactly is this night vision tech that you're claiming is so advanced that it is not already available to these terrorists from Pakistan?
Well, I think they're getting it for free now. They didn't have to pay for it.
It doesn't matter because they've never been short of arms. The terrorists have gotten their pick of arms.
Okay, that is something that you know that our viewers don't know, and I also don't know. Good. Raghuveer Pathasarthi wants to know, what are your views on Taliban overtures to India?
Excellent. We should recognize the Taliban and then play divide and rule amongst them. This is the same stupidity we're repeating now. When they came up with the concept of good Taliban, bad Taliban, instead of being churlish, stupid, petulant little children saying, oh, this is wrong on principle, moral grounds, blah, 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 you should say, yes, we agree, there's good Taliban, bad Taliban. And then we should have made them fight each other and kill their Pakistani handlers.
Hey, what is your take?
Have a fantastic opportunity to make the Haqqani network fight the Quetta Shura, fight ISIS-K. And you still don't want to do it because you're too stupid to do it. You're too scared to do it.
What do you make of the 6 divisions that exist within Taliban? 1 that follows or controlled by China, 2 that are controlled by Pakistan, and the 3 remaining, which are Pashtun, they are basically not controlled by anybody. Do you buy this view?
Sorry, what the factions within the Taliban?
There are 6 factions in Taliban. 6 factions.
Well, there are 3 major ones. Well, 2 major ones, 1 semi, and 3 minor ones. The more factions, the better. Because the more factions means the more you can make people fight. Right? Look at everything as an opportunity. You need to be using this to play one off against the other.
Next question,
and
please.
China controls no Taliban at all. The Pakistanis would never allow it.
And Venkatrama Muthuswamy wants to know, what is your understanding of the wait and see policy of the Modi Sarkar vis-a-vis the Taliban regime in Afghanistan?
I just told you, we should be proactive in all of this. Go ahead and do what you need to. But we will sit, we'll fiddle, we'll give great lectures at the UN. The parallels between Modi and Nehru are just too astounding to be true.
Ashish Upadhyay, kindly comment on report that TTP has forced Pakistani forces to flee from a province in Pakistan near Afghan border. Do you see this escalating?
But they're hitting them very hard. I think today another 9 Pakistani soldiers have been killed. Yesterday 9 Pakistani soldiers were killed. So, this is blowback Pakistan is getting. It's going to get a lot more blowback. So wait and watch the fun.
Wow. Raghuveer Parthasarathi again. I hear that East Turkmenistan militants are joining Taliban in the region adjoining the Xinjiang area. Is that true?
East Turkestan, not East Turkmenistan. Turkmens are Oghuz Turks. Uh, the Uyghurs are what's that branch of the Turkic family called? The Karluk. So they're two completely different. Don't get your Turkmen and East Turkestan Uyghurs confused. They are not the same. I'm sure there are a lot of Uyghurs there. Let's see how they continue. They're not joining. They're already there. Let's see what happens with them.
Shailesh Latkar wants to know, with modern infrastructure in Aksai Chin, will Chinese Air Force get a Phillip over the Indian Air Force?
No, look, there's fundamental things about geography that no infrastructure can realistically compensate for, right? If you're flying off from 10 to 15,000 feet high plateaus and airfields, you're fundamentally taking off with a massive, massive, massive disadvantage compared to India taking off from about 800 to 900 feet high on the Indo-Gangetic plains. Max. So, there are certain things which simply can't change. Also remember that infrastructure has to be supplied from somewhere. That infrastructure doesn't create ammunition and things out of thin air. So, it actually, when you say infrastructure, it's a concentration point of ammunition. It's literally your enemy saying, in school, if you didn't like somebody, you used to paste something on their back saying, put a target on it and saying, please slap me. And they wouldn't understand why people were going and hitting them really hard on their backs. So it's almost like the Chinese putting a target saying, please bomb here. Or please bomb this railway line, because if you bomb those 5-10 targets and you bomb that one railway line disrupts, or that one road, that one bridge, it disrupts the entire logistics chain. So there's certain things which, no amount realistically of infrastructure can actually compensate for.
Next question, please. Bhushan Ahuja, was the massive arsenal left behind deliberate?
Yes, it was deliberate, because they just decided it was immaterial. It may seem like a lot to us. $85 billion is a lot of money, but in their thing, the cost of taking it out was less than the cost of leaving it behind, because they never considered it to be militarily a game.
Was more than.
The cost of taking it out was much more than the cost of leaving it behind. And anyway, any of the important things they would have disabled. They would have removed any of the sensitive electronic equipment, would have all been removed and, taken back with them. Speaking
of aircraft, has anyone done a technical comparison of F-16 and the equivalent Chinese aircraft?
There's several. The Chinese don't really match up to this thing. I've spoken to several Pakistanis who have worked on the JF-17 program. They wanted the JF-17. They chose the number 17 to show it was more advanced than the 16. But anybody in the Pakistan Air Force, they'll tell you it's not a patch on the F-16. So no. Even the J-10 and all of that, they're not really up to the mark. They look good, but there's a lot of things where China simply isn't. Even Korea, when you go into the Pentagon and ask them, they'll tell you, look, we give a lot of technology to Japan because there's a lot of technology that Japan produces that we need. But Korea, there's not much technology we give them because there's not much technology that we need from them. There's nothing that they produce that we need. And Korea is way ahead of China in a lot of things. I mean, the way Korea, for example, has completely destroyed Japan in mobile phones, in smart TVs and things like that. Even in cars. Today, Hyundais and things are way ahead of Toyota and things in innovation and things like that, right? Still, the Americans are very adamant about the same thing with, the Chinese anti-ship ballistic missile. In public, because they want funding, they'll start crying buckets and saying, oh, this is a major threat, this, that. In private, when you go talk to them, they're like, yeah, big deal, who cares? They're not going to do it. It's a stupid concept through and through.
In 1996, I had visited LG factory. And in those days, you still had the VCRs, you still had the Japanese brands. So I was walking towards this guy's desk, and on my left and on my right, he was pointing out to me, Osaka, Sanyo, JVC, all the, Japanese brands were all being manufactured by LG. And he laughingly said, same technology, different design box, different box. That was it. I mean, this was, the VCR industry was going down, but that is how it was. South Korea had a complete lock on this stuff. Next question, please. Utsav wants to know how to fix stray animals problem in India.
Depends which stray animals. I'm presuming you're talking about dogs. But it's very simple. Like you have gaushalas, you have shwanshalas. I think every city government should be forced to allocate land for it. You have a very effective sterilization program, because remember, sterilization reduces dog aggression. Food reduces dog aggression. So you take them to the shwanshalas where it's just open ground, where they're there, where you just give them food, basic veterinary care and things like that. They live their lives, right? But they won't do it. They'll go on mass killing sprees. In Kashmir, for example, one of the things the government always did was to go on mass culling of dogs, because the dogs always used to warn the security forces that there were militants around. So
How is that?
I think it was because it's an intruder coming out. They don't like it. Have you gone into a neighborhood at night where you're not a local, and the dog will chase you when you're going through on a motorbike, or they'll just start barking at you if you're an unfamiliar person?
Early warning.
In Tamil, they were called Ratri Bhairavar. No? The dogs were called the Bhairavas of the night.
Right.
The Pichakaran, you had a Pichakaran who would reside in your street, and you would only give that beggar food, and you would only give your street dog food because the dog guarded your lane at night. Same logic, right? So there is a certain thing about a lack of food. So there's food aggression, and then there's, especially amongst female dogs, there is child protection aggression, which goes away if you sterilize them early enough. Amongst male dogs, there is territorial aggression, because they have to protect their territory. So all these things, there's sterilization, there's simply removing that. And, once you've sterilized them, they're not going to reproduce. Right now, your problem is getting out of hand because you refuse to sterilize.
Next question from Ashish Sharma. Why does the Bengali Bhadralok have an affinity towards Marxism and Bengalis in general towards arts, poetry, theatre compared to the rest of the country?
Because it was the only part of the British Indian Empire to actually industrialize. Communism came to Russia and China before they industrialized, which was not what Marx predicted. Communism came to Bengal after it industrialized. Remember, Bengal is a deindustrialized state. Nehru worked very hard to deindustrialize Bengal. The entire deficit that Britain had vis-a-vis India after the Second World War during independence, which had to be repaid, it was something like $350 billion in modern day money. In those days, it was about 1.5 billion pounds, was because of Bengali industrialization. Forced industrialization, which created the Bengal famine. The British forced that industrialization on Bengal to create a local industry to sustain the war effort and things. But it was basic stuff like that where they industrialized first, and so communism came in the exact sequence that Marx predicted it would come. And as for the arts and poetry and things, probably because Bengali as we know it is an extremely new language. It's only become a sort of that pride, that literally pride and things like that. Bengal's place in India has come about because of the Bengali Renaissance, which started very late compared to the rest of India in the last 150, 200 years. So it's one of those things where I won't say most Bengalis are inclined towards it. It's just that it's much more prominent because it was the most modern flowering of the arts in India.
Jay Krishan Lal, if the Northern Alliance is so strong, why don't the US train and incorporate them into Afghan government and military? I thought they were part of it.
There is no Northern Alliance left. There's none.
I think they're talking about the United Front, which is Saleh and Masood.
Okay, but that was part of the Afghan government. These are rump elements from the Afghan government. And where is the Afghan government even left now to do anything? They signed a deal, sold their own people out, and ran away.
So where are the 30,000 soldiers? Even assuming that there's only one
They've
in
all
10
gone
days.
into, they've all blended into the population. Some of them have crossed the border into Tajikistan, some into Uzbekistan, and some into Iran.
Vipin Kumar, Tukde gang, leftists, other anti-India forces seem to be within the wings, waiting in the wings to pounce on BJP government, even willing to break Mahabharat. Is that the reason Modi government is going soft on farmers, West Bengal, Shaheen Bagh, etc.?
Look, the BJP is going soft because the BJP are prize incompetent jackasses. We now realize that Godhra was never an act of commission, it was an act of omission. Modi couldn't have orchestrated those riots because he simply didn't know how to do it, and he didn't even know how to control riots. Which is why even after coming to Delhi, his streak of incompetence has continued. When the Seelampur riot started, he didn't know how to control it. When it transformed into Shaheen Bagh, he didn't know how to control it. When it became the Delhi riots, he didn't know how to control it. Then when in West Bengal, they started killing BJP party workers, he didn't know what to do about it. He didn't even tweet about it, even though he tweeted for Shabana Azmi's nose. He did squat when the farmers were uprooting, when the farmers were blocking. He did squat. And I've been if you go through my Twitter timeline, the moment all these things start, I've been predicting it from day one. It wasn't a special prediction to me. Everybody knows that if you don't control things like this, blockages and uprooting or breaking of infrastructure at an early stage, it will flare into violence. Imagine after, when did he become Chief Minister of Gujarat? In 2000, na? After 21 years.
2001, yeah.
After 21 years, if this man hasn't learned how to deal with public law and order and security, it has nothing to do with some great 10-dimensional chess. It has to do with a man being scintillatingly stupid or scintillatingly cynical. That he thinks of human lives as condoms to be used for his own political gains. So either he is a moron or you're a moron for voting for him. Unfortunately, I will also vote for him because there is no option. Because it's a choice between a moron and a mahamoron called Rahul Gandhi.
Ashish Sharma, do you think parents in American schools should consider homeschooling their kids because schools are teaching crap like critical race theory and that math is racist?
Yes, you should. The issue is these CRT types, they have taken over the certification boards and things like that. So how are you ever then going to integrate your homeschooled kid into a college environment or into a work environment where, unless you have had DEI training or a DEI certificate, you are not allowed to get a degree and things like that? But yes, maybe start off with homeschooling. But here's the issue again. Look, there's no accounting for where your kid will go. Indrajit Gupta's father, I think a lot of these communist leaders' fathers were Hindu Mahasabha leaders, and they all turned communist. Okay, and a lot of communist children turned Kattarpanthi Hindu. Just let them be, because if your kid is meant to be woke, have you ever considered your kids might not be the smartest? They might have a sort of need to find refuge in victimhood. I think the only way of preventing that is to, even if they're not smart, don't conventionally smart, don't give them an inferiority complex about it. Just teach them to be comfortable with themselves. Teach them not to hate people having things that they don't have, and to work hard for what they get. In some cases, it'll work. In 20% of the cases, maximum it'll work. 80% of the cases, it'll fail. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't blame yourself for it that your kid doesn't subscribe or ascribe to your points of view, etc., etc., etc. Right? Just take a very philosophical approach on this. This is Karmanyavadi Karaste. I mean, everybody
Mahapale
listening
Sukadachana.
to understand what it actually means in their, I mean, practical application in real life, they don't seem to get. Just take it and take a very philosophical point of view. There's a high chance that your kids might become, at least 80% of our viewers today, their kids might become the next BLM rock star or the next CRT rock star, the next Ibrahim Zindi or Kendi or whatever its name is. Uh, don't love them any less for it. Just let them be who they are. There's nothing you can do about it. And don't brainwash your child. Because when you brainwash your kids, you're doing exactly what the other side's doing.
Unirider wants to know, lifeless artificial intelligence, robots, machines taking human lives is wrong. Will Geneva Conventions be updated? Only humans should pull the trigger with supervision?
Okay, that is the accepted legal point of view, that artificial intelligence should not be allowed to take a human life. I'm a bit conflicted about it. Because, when it comes to actually pushing the button, there are so many inputs and emotions that will go through, because you're making, by removing the human, lots of humans from the loop, you're putting a huge emotional burden on just the person who's pushing the button. On the other hand, what if those weapons become autonomous, like, that Terminator movie and things like that, which is not a possibility right now, but it could be at some point, where quantum computing and things like that get microed enough to be able to pull it off. I think the people doing the best thing, go to the ICRC website. They have some of the best, the International Committee of the Red Cross. Download some of their publications on autonomous and AI warfare. They have some of the best writings. They are activists because they want a human in the chain. But they're not stupid activists. It's very well argued. It is one side of the argument. Personally, I'm of the opinion that in some cases, you just need to automate killing. In several cases, it removes the sort of judicial capriciousness, which again is a manifestation of human capriciousness, which doesn't have to be a judge on a Supreme Court bench. It can be in the individual himself. So it kind of removes that this thing. But I'm a very amoral person, so I'm not on any side in this. I'm still a very open mind. I haven't made my mind up about it. I will not agree with the fact that it is wrong in any way till somebody makes a convincing argument for it. And right now I've only heard moral arguments against it. I have not heard a technology or principles argument against it.
Divyanshu Srivastava wants to know, do you think Congress economic policies were better than BJP's?
No, they were just as rotten as the BJP's. The thing is, the Congress was more corrupt, which was better. Because, when you have bureaucracies which essentially try to slam the door in your face, bribery acts as a lubricant. So at least during the Congress thing, you could pay somebody and get your work done. Now the Babus won't let you do anything, and you can't even bribe them to get things done. So Congress policies were as bad as BJP policies, or let's put it this way. BJP policies are almost as bad. They're not almost. They're actually worse than what Prakash Karat and Sitaram Yechuri would come up with. The thing is, bribery made life easier during Congress days. It does not during BJP days.
Next question, please. Krishna Aital wants to know, Acharya Abhijit ji, what game is Russia up to? Is their objective to screw Pakistan now that the Americans have screwed themselves?
No. They're in this with the Pakistanis through and through. I've told you this before. Putin's man on Afghanistan, Zamir Kabulov, he's a through and through ISI agent. There are people in the Kremlin who actually believe he's compromised to the ISI. He's the schmuck who went around saying that the solution to Afghanistan lies in Kashmir. So he is, unfortunately, Putin has trusted him too much. He was very good at screwing over the Americans because, he just outsourced the job to the Pakistanis. So he went down very well in Putin's book, and Putin started trusting him, when in fact he had to do nothing except parrot the Pakistani line for the Pakistanis to do what they were anyway doing. I mean, Zamir Kabulov didn't even have to parrot the Pakistani line for the Pakistanis to be helping the Taliban kill Americans, but he did. So Russia is actually just as screwed up in this. They themselves don't know what their next moves are going to be. So remember, nobody screws over Pakistan. Pakistan screws over everybody else.
Sahil Mahajan, AIM, can India use share Stanakzai in Afghanistan to further their cause?
You can't use squat in Afghanistan to further squat. We've got nothing in Afghanistan. There is no Indian cause out there. Your only hope right now is in divide and rule and making people fight. That's it. Okay? That is it. That is literally it. Because remember, it doesn't matter who is in power. If you even start up your infrastructure and other projects out there to help the Afghan people, they will be subjected to terror attack. If the Haqqani network doesn't attack them, then ISIS-K will attack them, or somebody else will attack them. And when the Quetta Shura is in a downward trajectory, they might also decide to attack them. So your thing is, you have lost the kingdom. Now set the kingdom on fire.
Next question from Vaibhav Chaudhary. What is your opinion on the new education policy? And if you are asked to recommend some changes, what would they be?
So this is a classic, NEP is a classic case of the stupid cut and paste that we do. We have seen, oh, we should have problem-solving approaches. Let's do that from the West. Have you seen the caliber of your teachers? Even in good schools, I can tell you, dude, I went to some pretty damn good schools, so-called elite schools. 90% of our teachers were crap. Okay, remember, a problem-solving approach to pedagogy requires an extremely high training of teachers. They never even thought of that. So your national education policy is the classic case of trashy policy of copying what other people do without understanding the ways and means to enable something like that. What you needed to do was to first have just one syllabus, get everybody on board, have a common minimum syllabus. Okay. Then it was to get focus on the absolute basic essentials. Your language, great clarity of language, not literature, but grammar. Okay. Because how many people are actually going to seek an artistic career for them to learn literature? It's completely useless. And yet most of what you learn in English or Hindi or Tamil is literature. So sort that out. Then you have to simplify the language, because the formal spoken and the written are huge. The informal spoken day to day and the written are hugely different. That needed to happen. Okay, you need to understand what is the costing. I'm yet to see a cost benefit analysis of what kind of teacher training they intend to do for the teachers themselves to be problem solving oriented as opposed to learning by rote oriented. For a bulk country like India, where the problem is quantity, rote is the only way out. Because for these kind of numbers, for a population of 1.3 billion, you can't have subjective standards. Because those subjective standards will vary from region to region, they'll vary from district to district. A Jorbagh school where all the fine posh Jorbagh kids go will be very different from a Humayunpur Basti school within 2 kilometers of each other. Not 2, but maybe 4 or 5 kilometers of each other. Right? So it's very problematic. If anything, the NEP just shows you how disconnected governments in India are from practicality, applicability, execution, finances, etc., etc., etc. There's a huge disconnect. There's no thinking of the second, third order effects. There's no thinking of the ways and means. There's no thinking of if you have the infrastructure or not, if you have the mental faculties and the capacities or not. A whole host of things. Think of it this way: the closest equivalent of this is the national education policy of India is like the Afghan LGBTQ collective thinking it can have a pride parade in Kabul today.
Next question from Karthik Sharma. One question at a time I'm going to go. First one is, with ISIS attacking Kabul airport, is this now a three-sided war?
It may be more than a three-sided war. Right now, it's a two-sided war because the way I read it is ISIS was trying to help Haqqani. The Haqqani faction is slightly lower in power compared to the Quetta Shura right now. I think they were trying to equalize. So it's right now a two-sided war. It may become a three-sided war. It may become a 6, 7, 8-sided war. Wait and watch. It's still too early. This is why we need to get in there very, very early and tailor the outcomes in a way that we have a foot in every single faction out there.
Like, second question, like post-World War II Germany, would the breakup of Afghanistan among NATO allies be an option for better control?
Arey bhai, they couldn't control it for 20 years. How are they going to control it if you have a French zone, a German zone, an Italian zone? Sorry, not Italian, British and Russian zone. How is it going to be better? What interest does Pakistan have there? Far from it, it's the reverse. If you break it up into Pashtunistan, it's going to boil over into Pakistan, but it's anyway going to boil over into Pakistan. Okay, Iran, the last thing you want is for Iran to get in there into Herat and the Hazara areas, into the Shia and the Hazara areas, because that's the last thing you want for them to come even more and more and more into the Indian subcontinent. Okay, the Uzbek areas, the Tajik areas are fine. I mean, if they go, they go. That's about it. But no, you want to continue using Afghanistan. If you can't control and win Afghanistan, you need to make it to the point where Pakistan suffers the same there that Russia and America suffered.
Next question, same Karthik Sharma. With North Korea starting another nuclear missile program, is China spreading US thin by directing North Korea on the east and burning Afghanistan through Pakistan in the west?
I don't think they've started a new nuclear missile program. They've started a reactor. They've reactivated the Yongpyeong nuclear reactor. So I don't know what the exact missile in question here is. Sorry, can you keep bringing back that? Can you please not change the question till we've finished answering that question?
Yeah. Please leave it like, yeah.
Is China spreading the US thin? Well, China's whole game is to spread the US thin. They do it everywhere because America has this interventionist approach. But it's not China doing it. It's America itself which has spread itself thin. Who asked them to go into Libya? Who asked them to go into Syria? Who asked them to go into Iraq? Who asked them to go into Afghanistan? They go in. Who asked them to go into Yemen? They go in. Who asked them to go into where Haiti and things like that once upon a time? They go in. So it's not China doing it. It's America's own tendencies. China is using their own tendencies against them, their own proclivities against them.
Next question, please. Shailesh Latkar, can private money be brought in to develop Lakshadweep Islands to bring it to the level of a Hawaii or Maldives?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's what needs to be done. You know, one corporate house needs to take over each island and turn it into a tourist haven where all the locals get employment opportunities and things like that. It's desperately required at the moment. So it has to be private money. The government can't get involved in this because, as we've seen, the government is incompetent. It's got the anti-Midas touch. You know, Midas was the Lydian king. Anything he touched turned to gold. The government of India has always had an anti-Midas touch. They go and touch a pot made of gold and it turns to shit immediately.
Next question, please. Nishchal wants to know, are there any organizations planning to build big Dravidian-style Hindu temples in USA? There are Nagara-style Swaminarayan temples. Oh, there are many temples with the Gopuram.
I have a very, very poor opinion of modern temples being built in classical styles. It basically shows a severe ossification of the mind. It shows that you can't really think or design things. So I certainly hope they're not planning on doing it. There was a time, there was a great beauty to building the Tanjore temple where everything had to be carved by hand and things. If you're going to do the same thing by machines, where is the devotion? Where is the dedication? How is it tough? It has to all temples, all places of worship. Why are they so grand? They always push the architectural and engineering boundaries of their time. That is the devotion in them. Because they require so much more care, so much more attention, so much more money, so much more effort. Just replicating things over and over again just makes you an extremely fossilized society that deserves to be wiped out.
Okay. Yeah, YSK Chaitanya, how do you kill an idea effectively? Example, like the idea of insurgency in India. How did Stalin do it in Central Asia?
Well, you can't really kill ideas very effectively unless they're accompanied by brutal actions on the ground. Do you know what Stalin did in Central Asia? Mass deportation, millions of people executed. He was actually a lot worse than Hitler when it came to mass deportations and things like that. It wasn't very nice. You can't do these things anymore. Remember, Afghanistan that you're looking at is what exactly, in terms of social mores, in terms of education, in terms of the barbarism, Afghanistan today is exactly what Central Asia was 200-300 years back. The Soviets also didn't manage to control the Russian, the Tsars didn't manage to change it much the way the Soviets did. And that requires a lot of forced separation from your families and literally a reign of terror to do it.
Vikram Vaishampayan wants to know, what do you think of unidentifiable flying objects or unidentified flying objects, US military technology?
I think they're different things. I think UFO is meant to be aliens, so it's not US military technology. I think it's hogwash, and I'll tell you why. Number one, if there were people advanced enough for speed of light travel or the kind of interstellar travel that you're looking at, they won't actually need the kind of physical contact you need right now. Number one. Number two, if they were, in all likelihood, they would be an extraordinarily bellicose race because it is war that leads to discovery. Historically, it's always been the case. It is conflict that leads to innovation and discovery. The more violent you are, and this is extrapolating a human tendency, which you can kind of say would apply to life generally, unless you have a planet where it's not survival of the fittest, but survival of the weakest, which I doubt would ever happen realistically. It could be. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you could, this is all based on the assumption of carbon-based life. There could be non-carbon-based life we don't know about. But do aliens exist? Yes. Are these things we're seeing visitations by these aliens? No. Because very simply, how is it that the quality of cameras and the availability has gone through the roof? Today, your iPhone or your Google Pixel is better than several high-end cameras that you could get in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and much more available and things like that now, which can record video, and the quality of recording simply hasn't gone up. You're seeing the same grains that you saw then now. Kaise hota hai, bhai? No, I don't. Do I believe in aliens? Yes. Have they visited Earth? No. Are these things aliens? No.
Have you read Eric von Daniken?
No.
Okay. Sahil Mahajan, is the BJP blind or stupid to trust Russia as the Russian state mouthpiece? Retweet media openly criticizes India and praises Pakistan?
Yes. They're not blind. They're just stupid. They're just generally very stupid. Their only idea is winning elections, and they're very low class, low education narratives, very lowest common denominator kind of narratives. That's all they do. You can't expect sophistication from the The BJP has lots of sophisticated leaders. But under the current leadership, you can't expect sophistication. You can't expect... basically, you have slogans substituting for policy, and you have a generally in Indira Gandhi approach to even that policy, that it's all state-driven, and no real depth of thinking. What are the second-order effects? What are the third-order effects? Hota nahi hai. RT, we've been warning the government for such a long time. Control it, control it, control it, control it. This is one of those medias you can control because you just need to crack the whip in Moscow. They don't. Enjoy yourself.
If you look back at the prime ministers that ruled India, Narasimha Rao probably stands out as an intellectual. I can't really find anybody else in that caliber. Your thoughts?
Narasimha Rao was a giant. Okay, Vajpayee may not have been a giant, but he was a truly great man. The rest of them are all pygmies. They're not even pygmies. They're microbes. They're amoeba.
Neeraj Singh wants to know when India will be industrialized producing quality goods. Currently, we are served B-grade domestic goods in the name of Desh Bhakti. I love China's Xiaomi.
Congratulations. I don't touch Chinese shit with a barge pole. I will never touch Chinese shit. Does that mean I have to spend more? Yes, but I assiduously ensure that nothing I buy is Chinese. It's the one thing I check. And it's not new. It's not post-Galwan. I've been doing this for the last 5-6 years. Because, when I started working on cyber security, there were so many things that got flagged in terms of backdoors and things to almost every Chinese equipment. I wasn't going to touch it, number one. Number two, when is India going to get industrialized? Not in my lifetime, possibly not in your lifetime as well. So congratulations to you.
All right, I'm going to interrupt here for a second. Hold on. Next question I'm going to put. Satya Saran wants to know, my second salary to PGurus if this gets answered. Hi Abhijit, can we have a Shiva temple with a Mobius strip design in the future?
Mobius strip design kya hota
hai? You've got us. I also don't know what a
Wait. Let me just check this quick, because if it's something worthwhile, because these are ideas, because readers always give us ideas. See,
yes,
some of my most brilliant ideas I've gotten from readers, and I always acknowledge those ideas. My editor for some reason removes them, but usually when I then tweet it out, I always acknowledge readers who have given me good ideas. But
so Satya Saran, today is your jackpot day. Abhijit is actually stopping the regular transmission to go take a look on the web as to what a Mobius strip means.
Okay, I think you could, theoretically, I've seen a bridge in Graz or Innsbruck in Austria that kind of looks like a Mobius strip. Kind of, not exactly. But why not? Tell me why not? It could be a completely abstract Shiva temple. I don't know, have you been to the Pondicherry, the temple in Pondicherry? It's abstract, beautiful. Yeah.
Auroville.
The great golden circle with the reflection and the crystal in between. It's stunningly beautiful. It's a deeply calming place. You do feel spirituality there.
All right. Okay. So next question, please. Yeah.
And remember, Hinduism is something where if you want to see God as a murti, you can. But if you want to see God as an abstraction, you can. I think Hinduism would be one of those places where a temple with an abstract feature temple with an abstraction as the focal point of reverence would be beautiful. If you haven't been to Pondicherry, I highly recommend you see how this actually works in practice.
Aditya wants to know, should reforms/laws have an expiry time concept?
Not an expiry time concept, but they should have a failure accounting and audit process. where, for example, if certain benchmarks are ticked, the program will be discontinued. If certain parameters are not met, the program will be discontinued, etc., etc., etc. I think every reform or program introduced must clearly state what its objectives are and at what point it will be altered, withdrawn, changed, or expired.
Manny Pawar wants to know, do you think the youth in India live a pseudo-American reality? Their intellectual capacity is influenced by AOC, Kamala, or other intellectuals like Jordan Peterson, ignoring the objective reality of India.
Of course, that is the biggest problem of India. We only cut, copy, paste. We're a cut, copy, paste culture. Even our own temples, we cut, copy, paste. All the temples we're building in America, we cut, copy, paste what the Choras did 1,000 years back. If you're cut, copying and pasting what Choras did 1,000 years back, not even putting the kind of human effort or engineering required into it that the Choras put in 1,000 years back, what does that make you? We are a cut, copy, paste culture. It is who we are. And inferiority complex, which is why we take the worst examples. Yugesh Sai Reddy.
Yeah,
After
go ahead.
Came to the Afghan army, is it a good idea for India to depend on them while tackling China? What if they leave halfway and blame us? Good question. See, my thing has always been, don't trust them, but you need to get a lot of equipment from them and you need to use their markets. Remember, how did China become a big power? Had it not been access, where would China be without access to the American market? Understand to use people. Nobody should depend on the other person. But to get certain technologies, to get economic development in the...
We just got you muted. You got muted. You
see me now? Can you?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. So you need to, you don't have to depend on the Americans. Use them.
Next question, please. Last two, and then we'll wrap it up. Tiger Sharma, Democratic Party of USA and Biden is pro-Pakistan. All left weapons will be given to Pakistan and China. What is the question here, Tiger?
We've just discussed this.
Okay, we'll slip them. Yeah.
No.
Sahil Mahajan, what is Christine Fair's credibility as an analyst? If it is good, why is she not paid heed in Washington?
Well, look, she went from being a Pakistani stooge. There wasn't a single Pakistani line that she didn't propagate till about 2010, 2011, 2012 at least, maybe more, 2013 to 2014. Till 2014, there wasn't a single Pakistani line that she did not propagate. She was literally the spokesperson of the Pakistani embassy in Washington. You go look at all her writings and speeches before that. She was literally the Pakistan Chief of Army Staff, whose most trusted lieutenant in DC. Then she did, because she got denied a visa or whatever, she did a complete 180-degree backflip. Okay. So best of luck. Is her analysis good now? Yes, it is. But remember, everything she wrote before she turned... Now, I'm not saying that it's good only because it's pro-India at the moment. There's some element of validating what we believe to be true that she's validating. But remember, she was an absolutely worthless, horrible researcher who used to lie through her nose as long as she was doing Pakistan's bidding till 2012, 2013. You go read what she wrote. She was essentially saying the same thing that all the what Lindsey Graham and people like that are saying today. Oh, Pakistan is a stakeholder. Pakistan needs to be incentivized. Pakistan is right in supporting the Taliban, etc., etc. I wish her changes on policy were based on facts rather than her personal peaks, preferences, who gave her a visa and who gave her a business class ticket.
Next, this is the last question. Pratulya Chand. is there a possibility of a fourth front in Indian politics with the right alignment, that is nationalism and Hindu pride? Voters should have an alternative to BJP.
I agree. Who's going to create it? See, it took the RSS almost 70 years to finally get it to power, to get the BJP into power. Who's going to create it? I think there's bright prospects. The question is, who has the staying power for the next 20 to 25 years to break off that Hindu vote, the right wing, the economic right, socially liberal. There's several ways you can break up the Hindu vote. To do that, everybody doing it is only doing it from the crazy left anti-Hindu point of view. So is it possible? Theoretically, yes. Should there be an option? Yes. The question is, will it ever sell on the ground? Because we've, again, go to that book by, who was it? By John Garrett Jones, The Hive Mind, and you'll see the IQ, individual IQ is not enough to develop a country. It's the group IQ, the average IQ of the nation that matters. With a low IQ country like India, they're very easily carried away by slogans. What does Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas mean? I read it as socialism. What does Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam mean? I read it as a public toilet. So, if people can get carried away with trash like this and use that as a substitute, how do you expect an intelligent... I think the Indian political system disincentivizes the intelligent and incentivizes the lowest common denominator stupidity.
And that brings us to the end of today's program. Ravi, we will have... Okay, last question. Ravi Raj, no more questions, please. Ravi Raj, how accurate or objective is anthropology?
Reasonably accurate. There's see, it keeps improving as archaeological techniques improve and our understanding, because that adds to our understanding of history. It's as good as the inputs, but the principles are solid. Okay, the principles are absolutely rock solid. What is the primary principle of anthropology? That humans, as a rule, will behave exactly the same. Groups of humans will behave exactly the same, depending on geography and local stimulus, and therefore economics and things like that. That's the principal rule of anthropology. It's never been disproven ever.
And viewers, that brings us to an end of today's Ask Abhijit. We'll be back again next week. Please do like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. And Vail Vail Vetrivel and Jai Shri Krishna.
And happy Janmashtami to everyone. Tata. Vail Vail Vetrivel.
Bye.